Prepare to dive into a world of legendary extravagance, notorious parties, and homes that became as famous as their very single, very talked-about owners. These aren't just houses. They were the epicenters of unique lifestyles, creative explosions, and sometimes pure, unadulterated hedonism. Imagine a Gothic mansion in Los Angeles acquired for just over $1 million in 1971, complete with a secret grotto and its own zoo license. Picture a sleek Palm Springs desert oasis built for $150,000 in 1947, boasting a piano-shaped swimming pool where champagne often flowed more freely than water. Think of a southern mansion bought for $102,500 in 1957, which became a personal kingdom for a king of music, featuring a room with 3 television sets decades before multi-screen viewing was common. Envision a legendary lover whose name is now a synonym for seduction, creating temporary opulent nests across Europe, documenting over 122 conquests in his detailed memoirs. And consider a rebel poet who once kept a bear as a pet at university, later transforming a grand Venetian palace rented for 200 sequins a year into a chaotic haven filled with a bizarre collection of animals and even more numerous human companions. These were the ultimate bachelor pads, each a universe unto itself. Get ready to explore the stories, the secrets, and the sheer audacity behind the 5 most famous bachelor pads in history. Number 5. Lord Byron's wild Venetian palace and its animal house vibes. George Gordon Byron, more commonly known as Lord Byron, was a leading figure of the Romantic movement in early 19th century England. He was a poet, a peer of the realm, politician, and a celebrity whose life generated as much, if not more, attention than his influential poetry. By 1816, at the age of 28, Byron found himself separated from his wife, Annabella Milbank, and surrounded by scandal and mounting debts in England. Public opinion had turned sharply against him, fueled by rumors about his private life and his separation. He decided to leave England in April 1816, never to return. After traveling through Belgium and Switzerland, where he famously spent time with Percy Bysshe Shelley and Mary Godwin, Byron made his way to Italy, arriving in Venice in November 1816. Venice at that time was a city of fading grandeur under Austrian rule, but it still possessed an allure of mystery, romance, and a reputation for permissive social mores. This environment suited Byron's temperament and his desire for a life less constrained than the one he had left behind. He initially stayed in a draper's house in the Freseria, but soon sought more permanent and spacious lodgings. He found what he was looking for in the Palazzo Mocenigo on the Grand Canal. Or, more accurately, he rented apartments within one of the 4 interconnected Mocenigo palaces. He would live there for periods between 1817 and 1819. The rent for his grand rooms was reportedly 200 Venetian sequins a year, a considerable sum, though Byron, despite his debts, still had access to income from his estates and book sales. Palazzo Mocenigo provided a suitably dramatic backdrop for Byron's Venetian life. These palaces were imposing structures, reflecting the wealth and power of the Mocenigo family, one of Venice's most distinguished patrician families, which had produced 7 doges. Byron's apartments were spacious, if perhaps a little dilapidated, filled with large, echoing rooms characteristic of Venetian palazzi. It was here that Byron fully embraced a lifestyle that would add significantly to his already notorious reputation. He described his life in Venice as one of regularity. He rose late, rode his horse on the Lido sands, a daily ritual requiring a gondola journey to the island, dined, and then often attended the opera or social gatherings at the salon of Countess Marina Corini. Benzon, a prominent figure in Venetian society. The evenings frequently extended into late-night revelries and romantic encounters. One of the most remarked upon aspects of Byron's life at the Palazzo Mocenigo was his collection of animals. He had always been fond of animals, famously keeping a bear while a student at Trinity College, Cambridge, because dogs were forbidden. In Venice, his menagerie grew to include several dogs, 2 monkeys, a fox, a wolf, and various birds, including at least 1 crow and a falcon. These creatures roamed his apartments, adding to the somewhat chaotic and eccentric atmosphere of his household. His servants, numbering around 14, had to navigate this domestic zoo. This collection of animals was a source of amusement for Byron and astonishment for his visitors. Byron's romantic liaisons in Venice were numerous and widely discussed. He claimed in letters to have had affairs with a large number of Venetian women from various social classes. One of his most significant relationships during this period was with Mariana Segatti, his landlord's wife, when he first lodged in the Fred's area. After moving to the Palazzo Mocenigo, his most tempestuous and well-documented affair was with Margherita Cogni. She was 22 years old, the wife of a baker, and described by Byron as a fornerina, a baker's wife or daughter, and as beautiful but fierce, like a gentle tigress. She was illiterate, but possessed a fiery temperament that both captivated and exasperated Byron. She moved into the Palazzo Mocenigo and effectively took charge of the household, managing the servants and Byron's expenses with a firm hand. Their relationship was passionate and often stormy. On one occasion, after a quarrel, Margherita threw herself into the Grand Canal, from which she had to be rescued. Eventually, Byron ended the relationship, and Margherita's dramatic departure, involving threats and a final sorrowful farewell, became another episode in the Byron legend. It was amidst this whirlwind of social engagements, romantic entanglements, and the management of his peculiar household that Byron produced some of his most significant literary work. He learned Armenian at the monastery on the island of San Lazzaro degli Armeni, an island in the Venetian lagoon. He collaborated on an Armenian English grammar and dictionary. More importantly, he continued to write poetry. He completed the 4th canto of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage in Venice, a work that reflected his travels and his feelings of exile. He also wrote Beppo, a Venetian story that showcased his witty and satirical style, and began his epic satirical masterpiece, Don Juan. The first 2 cantos of Don Juan were written largely in Venice, its ironic and worldly tone perhaps influenced by the city's atmosphere and Byron's own experiences there. The poem, with its unconventional hero and its critique of social hypocrisy, became hugely popular and controversial. Byron's health suffered at times in Venice, possibly due to his indulgent lifestyle and the city's damp climate. He experienced bouts of fever. His financial situation also remained a concern, with his expenses in Venice being considerable. He entertained frequently, and his household was large. By late 1819, Byron seemed to have tired of the ceaseless social whirl and what he described as the sea Sodom of Venice. His relationship with Countess Teresa Guiccioli, a young married Italian noblewoman whom he met in April 1819, also played a significant role in his decision to leave the city. His involvement with Teresa led him to Ravenna and later to other parts of Italy, as he became increasingly involved in Italian politics and the Carbonari revolutionary movement. When Byron left Venice, he left behind the Palazzo Mocenigo, a place that had been the scene of intense creativity, extravagant living, and numerous scandals. The image of the English lord with his entourage of servants and animals, living a life of romantic and poetic abandon on the Grand Canal, became an enduring part of his legend. The Palazzo Mocenigo itself, while still standing today as a private residence and part museum, remains indelibly associated with this vibrant and tumultuous period in Lord Byron's life. It was, for a few years, the quintessential bachelor pad of a restless and brilliant poet, a stage for his dramatic existence far from the constraints of his homeland. The stories of his parties, his lovers, his animals, and his literary output there paint a vivid picture of a man living life on his own unconventional terms. The number of women he was linked with during this Venetian period is often cited in the dozens, with some accounts suggesting figures as high as 200 in 2 years. Though such numbers, often stemming from Byron's own boastful letters, are difficult to verify with complete accuracy. What is certain is that his time in Venice was prolific, both in terms of his writing and his personal adventures. Number 4. Giacomo Casanova's artful European nests of seduction. Giacomo Casanova, whose full name was Giacomo Girolamo Casanova de Saint Galt, lived from 1725 to 1798. His name has become so synonymous with the art of seduction that Casanova is now a common noun for a man with many lovers. While he never possessed a single long-term bachelor pad in the modern sense, his entire adult life was a series of temporary, often opulent residences across Europe that he transformed into stages for his elaborate schemes, intellectual pursuits, and most famously his romantic conquests. His memoirs, Histoire de ma vie, Story of My Life, provide a detailed, if sometimes embellished, account of his adventures and the settings in which they unfolded. Casanova was a Venetian by birth, and the city of Venice, with its labyrinthine canals, masked balls, and atmosphere of intrigue, was a fitting starting point for his exploits. He was a man of many talents and professions, a cleric, a soldier, a violinist, a lottery director, a spy, a magician, or at least he cultivated an air of mystique that some interpreted as magical, and a writer. His intellect was sharp, and he conversed with some of the most prominent figures of his time, including Voltaire, Rousseau, and Catherine the Great. However, it was his skill in navigating social circles and his amorous adventures that defined his legend. His bachelor pads were typically rented apartments, rooms in inns, or sometimes even lavish suites provided by wealthy patrons or admirers. What characterized these spaces was not their permanence, but how Casanova utilized them. He was a master of creating an atmosphere conducive to his aims, whether it was impressing a potential patron, conducting a risky financial venture, or seducing a woman. These spaces would be furnished, sometimes at considerable expense, to reflect his current persona and aspirations. He understood the power of appearances and used his living quarters as an extension of his carefully crafted image. Consider his time in Paris during the 1750s. He arrived with little money, but quickly insinuated himself into high society. He established a state lottery for King Louis XV, a venture that brought him considerable wealth, at least temporarily. With this newfound income, he lived extravagantly. His Parisian lodgings would have been chosen for their fashionable location and their ability to impress. He entertained lavishly, hosting dinners that were renowned for their exquisite food, fine wines, and stimulating conversation. These gatherings were not merely social, they were strategic, designed to enhance his reputation and provide opportunities for new connections, both financial and romantic. He meticulously detailed in his memoirs the sums he spent on clothing, carriages, and maintaining a certain lifestyle, all essential props for his role as a man of sophistication and means. Casanova's approach to seduction was often elaborate and patient. His temporary residences became theaters for these pursuits. He would create intimate, comfortable environments, perhaps with soft lighting, luxurious fabrics, and the promise of privacy. He was known for his attentiveness, his wit, and his ability to make women feel cherished and understood. His memoirs document over 122 love affairs, ranging from fleeting encounters to more sustained relationships. Each of these encounters, as he describes them, was unique, tailored to the personality and circumstances of the woman involved. His apartments served as the private backdrop for these dramas, spaces where he could orchestrate the perfect romantic interlude. He often spent generously on gifts and experiences for his lovers, further enhancing the allure of these temporary nests. One famous episode that highlights his use of a specific location is his daring escape from the Piombi prison in Venice in 1756. He had been imprisoned in the Doge's palace, a formidable state prison for offenses against public decency and religion. His detailed account of his meticulous planning and eventual escape through the roof is a testament to his resourcefulness and determination. While a prison cell is hardly a bachelor pad, the episode, because his ability to manipulate his environment and his relentless pursuit of freedom, a freedom that allowed him to continue his peripatetic lifestyle. After his escape, Casanova roamed Europe, from the Netherlands to Russia, from Poland to Spain. In each city, he would establish a new base of operations. In Germany, he might present himself as the Chevalier de Saint-Galt, an enigmatic nobleman. In Russia, he sought an audience with Catherine the Great, hoping for a position at her court. His lodgings would vary with his fortunes. Sometimes he lived in luxury. At other times, when his funds were low or he had fallen out of favor, his accommodations were more modest, but always he attempted to maintain a degree of style and to use his living space to project an image of a man of consequence. The details of these numerous pads are scattered throughout his voluminous memoirs. He might describe a cozy inn room in a small German town where he wooed the innkeeper's daughter, or a grand apartment in Vienna where he entertained aristocrats. The insight into Casanova's bachelor pads is that they were not fixed entities, but rather a series of carefully carbued environments, adaptable and mobile, much like the man himself. He understood that the setting was crucial to the success of his ventures. Paid attention to details, the quality of the food and wine he served, the comfort of the furnishings, the discretion of the location. These were not just places to live. They were tools of his trade. The numbers associated with Casanova's life are often staggering. Beyond the 122 named liaisons, there were countless other encounters. The amounts of money he won and lost through gambling and speculation were enormous for the time. He traveled tens of thousands of miles across Europe by coach, a significant undertaking in the 18th century. His memoirs themselves run to over 3,500 pages, providing an unparalleled, albeit subjective, window into the social and sexual mores of his era. Ultimately, Casanova's bachelor pads were as ephemeral as his fortunes. He died in relative obscurity and poverty at the Duke's Chateau in Bohemia, now Duchkov in the Czech Republic, where he worked as a librarian for the Count von Waldstein. It was here in his later years that he wrote his memoirs, reliving the adventures and recreating the many temporary homes that had been the scenes of his extraordinary life. These memoirs ensure that while the physical spaces are long gone or unidentifiable, the essence of Casanova's bachelor lifestyle, a blend of intellectualism, roguish charm, and relentless pursuit of pleasure and opportunity, remains vividly preserved. His legacy is not in brick and mortar, but in the art of living life as a grand, seductive performance, with each new lodging a fresh stage. Number 3. Elvis Presley's Graceland, the King's Southern Comfort Castle. Elvis Aaron Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, purchased Graceland, a large mansion on a 13.8-acre estate in Memphis, Tennessee, in March 1957. He was just 22 years old. Price was $102,500. For Elvis, Graceland was more than just a home. It became his sanctuary, his private kingdom, and a legendary symbol of his success and unique personal style. While he would later marry Priscilla Bowley in 1967, and they would live there together. Graceland, especially in its earlier years and throughout his life, retained the distinct atmosphere of ultimate bachelor's domain to his every whim and desire. The mansion itself was a two-story, colonial revival-style house built in 1939 by Dr. Thomas More and his wife Ruth. It originally had 10,266 square feet of living space. Over the years, Elvis expanded and extensively redecorated Graceland, transforming it into the iconic 17,552 square foot, 23-room, including 8 bedrooms and bathrooms, complex that fans know today. His parents, Vernon and Gladys Presley, also lived at Graceland, and it was a hub for his close-knit group of friends and employees known as the Memphis Mafia. One of the earliest and most famous modifications Elvis made was the installation of the music-themed gates at the entrance to the driveway. These gates, designed by Abe Saucer and custom-built by John Dillers Jr. of Memphis Doors, Incorporated, feature musical notes and depictions of Elvis playing the guitar. They became an instant landmark, a sign that one was entering the world of the king. Inside, Graceland reflected Elvis's distinctive and often flamboyant taste. The public rooms on the ground floor, such as the living room and dining room, were initially decorated in a more traditional style, but Elvis soon put his personal stamp on them. The living room featured a 15-foot-long white sofa and custom-made drapes. The dining room was set for formal entertaining. However, it was the private and entertainment areas that truly co-gate the bachelor pad aspect of Graceland. The basement was converted into a multimedia haven. One room became the TV room, famously equipped with 3 television sets built into one wall. Elvis reportedly got this idea from United States President Lyndon B. Johnson, who liked to watch all 3 network news broadcasts simultaneously. This setup in the late 1950s and early 60s was incredibly advanced and luxurious. Adjacent to the TV room was the pool room, or billiards room. Its walls and ceiling were strikingly covered in hundreds of yards of pleated patterned cotton fabric, a project that took 3 men 10 days to complete. The room was designed for leisure and camaraderie, a place for Elvis and his friends to unwind. Perhaps the most iconic room in Graceland is the Jungle Room, officially named the Den. Added in the mid-1960s as an extension to the back of the house, this room was decorated in 1974 with a Polynesian theme inspired by a favorite chair Elvis owned. It featured dark wood paneling, green shag carpets on both the floor and ceiling, stone effect walls, and an indoor waterfall built into one wall. The furniture was heavy and dark, with carved animal motifs. This room was a personal retreat for Elvis, a place where he could relax and entertain informally. It was also used as a makeshift recording studio in February and October of 1976, where Elvis recorded most of the tracks for his last 2 albums, From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee, and Moody Blue. Elvis's personal quarters upstairs, which are not open to the public on tours, included his bedroom, dressing room, bathroom, and an office. His bedroom was decorated in dark colors with black, red, and gold. He had a large custom-made bed and, of course, a television. Privacy was paramount for Elvis, and the upstairs floor was his exclusive domain, accessible only to his closest confidants. The grounds of Graceland were also developed to suit Elvis's lifestyle. Kidney-shaped swimming pool was one of the first additions. There was also a carport, which housed some of his many cars, including his famous pink Cadillac. He built a meditation garden, designed by Bernard Grenadier, which became a place for quiet reflection and eventually his final resting place, along with those of his parents and grandmother. Other additions over the years included a racquetball building, constructed in 1975. This 2-story structure housed a lounge area and a full-sized racquetball court, where Elvis and his friends often played late-night games. Life at Graceland was often a nocturnal affair. Elvis was a night owl, and the house would come alive after dark. He loved to watch movies and would frequently rent out entire local movie theaters for private all-night screenings for himself and his entourage. He also enjoyed riding horses on the Graceland grounds and playing impromptu music sessions. Kitchen at Graceland was famously stocked with his favorite foods, including ingredients for his beloved fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches. There was always someone on hand to cater to his culinary requests, day or night. Graceland was the scene of countless parties and gatherings, especially during Elvis's peak Bachelor years. It was a place where he could escape the pressures of fame and be himself, surrounded by people he trusted. The Memphis Mafia were a constant presence, providing companionship, security, and assistance. They lived in houses nearby, or sometimes stayed at Graceland itself. The atmosphere was one of loyalty and indulgence with Elvis, as the generous, if sometimes demanding, center of this unique universe. Even after his marriage to Priscilla in 1967 and the birth of their daughter Lisa Marie in 1968, Graceland remained Elvis's ultimate sanctuary. Lisa Marie spent her early childhood there. While the dynamics of the household changed with marriage and fatherhood, Elvis's personal stamp on Graceland, its design, and its rhythm of life remained strong. The house was a constant in his often turbulent life, a symbol of his roots and his extraordinary journey from poverty to superstardom. Elvis Presley died at Graceland on August 16, 1977, at the age of 42. The house, which he had owned for 20 years, became a place of pilgrimage for grieving fans from around the world. It was opened to the public for tours in 1982 and quickly became one of the most visited private homes in America, second only to the White House. Each year, hundreds of thousands of people visit Graceland, stepping back in time to experience the world of the king. The home is preserved much as Elvis left it, a time capsule of 1970s style and a testament to one man's incredible life and enduring legacy. Graceland stands as a unique monument. Part family home, part ultimate bachelor pad, all Elvis. Number 2. Frank Sinatra's Twin Palms, the desert hideaway that heard it all. Francis Albert Nasata, known professionally as Frank Sinatra, was one of the most influential and popular musical artists of the 20th century. His career spanned decades, from the swing era of the 1940s to his iconic status as a solo performer and actor. In 1947, at the age of 31 and at the height of his Bobby Soxer fame, Sinatra commissioned the construction of a desert home in Palm Springs, California. This house, known as Twin Palms, would become legendary not only for its innovative design but also as the backdrop for Sinatra's famously turbulent private life and lavish parties. It was in many ways the quintessential mid-century bachelor pad, even during periods when Sinatra was married. Sinatra hired the architect E. Stuart Williams to design the house. The initial request was for a Georgian-style mansion, but Williams, a proponent of the emerging desert modern architectural style, managed to persuade Sinatra to embrace a more contemporary design suited to the desert environment. The budget was $150,000, a substantial sum at the time. The resulting structure, located at 1148 East Alejo Road, was a sleek, single-story, 4,500 square foot residence that perfectly captured the sophisticated modern aesthetic of the post-war era. It featured 4 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, expansive glass walls, clean lines, and an open floor plan that blurred the lines between indoor and outdoor living. The house was completed in December 1947. One of the most iconic features of Twin Palms was its piano-shaped swimming pool. This was not just a whimsical design choice, it was a statement, a symbol of Sinatra's musical persona and his status as a leading entertainer. The pool became the centerpiece of the estate's outdoor entertainment area. the scene of countless parties where Hollywood royalty, musicians, and politicians mingled. Sinatra was a renowned host, and Twin Palms was his preferred venue for entertaining. Stories abound of all-night gatherings, with music playing, drinks flowing, and Sinatra himself holding court. A unique feature of the estate was a flagpole situated between the two signature palm trees that gave the house its name. Sinatra would reportedly hoist a Jack Daniels flag to signal to his neighbors and friends that it was cocktail hour and his bar was open. This became a well-known tradition in the neighborhood, an invitation to join the festivities at the Sinatra residence. The interior of Twin Palms was equally impressive for its time. It was furnished in a luxurious, modern style. There was a state-of-the-art sound system wired throughout the house, allowing Sinatra to play music in every room. Some reports suggest that an actual recording studio was built on the premises, or at least professional grade recording equipment was installed, allowing Sinatra to work on his music in the comfort of his home. The main house included a primary suite, guest suites, a formal living and dining room, and a kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances. There was also a separate pool house with its own kitchenette and changing rooms. Twin Palms is perhaps most famously associated with Sinatra's tumultuous relationship with actress Ava Gardner. Sinatra was married to Nancy Barbato when he began his affair with Gardner in 1949. He divorced Nancy in 1951 and married Ava Gardner just days later. Their marriage was passionate, glamorous, and notoriously volatile. Many of their legendary arguments reportedly took place at Twin Palms. One oft-repeated story involves a particularly explosive fight during which Gardner allegedly threw Sinatra's belongings, including clothes and gold records, out onto the driveway. Another tale describes Sinatra in a fit of rage or despair over Gardner, throwing a champagne bottle that chipped a bathroom sink. That chipped sink is said to have been preserved as a memento of their fiery relationship. The intensity of their romance and the drama that unfolded within its walls added to the mystique of Twin Palms. Even after Sinatra and Gardner separated in 1953 and eventually divorced in 1957, Twin Palms remained Sinatra's primary West Coast residence for several years. He continued to host lavish parties and entertain a string of famous guests. The list of visitors to Twin Palms read like a who's who of Hollywood. Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, Lana Turner, Marilyn Monroe, and members of the Rat Pack like Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. It was a place where the elite could relax, let their hair down, and enjoy Sinatra's hospitality away from the prying eyes of the press, though the house itself often generated its own headlines. Sinatra's lifestyle at Twin Palms was one of high living and meticulous attention to detail. He was known for his particular tastes and preferences. His favorite color, orange, was reportedly incorporated into the decor in subtle ways. He demanded perfection in everything, from the way his drinks were mixed to the arrangements for his parties. The staff at Twin Palms had to be attentive and discreet. In the mid-1950s, Sinatra began to spend more time at his other properties, including a penthouse in New York and later a larger compound in nearby Rancho Mirage, California, which he built in 1954. He sold Twin Palms in 1957, the same year he divorced Ava Gardner. However, the legend of the house continued to grow. It became a symbol of Palm Springs glamour and the Rat Pack era. The house has had several owners since Sinatra. It underwent restorations to preserve its architectural integrity and its connection to its famous first owner. E. Stewart Williams, the architect, was reportedly pleased with how subsequent owners maintained his original vision. Today, Twin Palms is available as a luxury vacation rental and a venue for private events, allowing new generations to experience a piece of Hollywood history. Visitors can still swim in the piano-shaped pool and imagine the star-studded parties that once took place there. The house stands as a monument to a particular moment in American culture, a time of post-war optimism, burgeoning celebrity, culture, and the rise of a new modern aesthetic, all embodied by Frank Sinatra and his desert hideaway. The echoes of laughter, music, and passionate arguments seem to linger in the desert air around Twin Palms, a house that truly heard it all. Number 1. Hugh Hefner's Playboy Mansion, the ultimate bachelor's fantasy land. Playboy Mansion, particularly Playboy Mansion West in Los Angeles, California, stands as perhaps the most iconic and widely recognized bachelor pad in modern history. Purchased by Hugh Hefner, the founder of Playboy magazine, in 1971, this sprawling Gothic Tudor estate became synonymous with a lifestyle of unrestrained hedonism, celebrity gatherings, and the Playboy philosophy itself. For over 4 decades, it served as Hefner's home, his office, and the ultimate adult playground, captivating public imagination and generating endless stories. Hugh Hefner bought the 29-room mansion, located in the affluent Holmby Hills neighborhood, for $1.05 million. At the time, this was the largest real estate transaction in Los Angeles history. The house was originally built in 1927 for Arthur Letts, Jr., son of the department store magnate Arthur Letts, Sr. Hefner officially moved in and made it his permanent residence and the West Coast hub of Playboy operations in 1974, gradually shifting the center of his empire from the original Playboy mansion in Chicago. The Los Angeles mansion sat on 5.7 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. The main house itself spanned approximately 20,000 square feet. It featured a grand entrance hall, a formal dining room, a library, a screening room with a built-in pipe organ, and numerous bedrooms and guest suites. Hefner's personal suite included a famously large circular rotating bed and elaborate entertainment systems. The mansion was a blend of classic architecture and modern amenities, constantly updated to reflect Hefner's tastes and the technological advancements of the time. Beyond the main house, the Playboy Mansion grounds were in Fantasyland, designed for entertainment and indulgence. One of its most legendary features was the grotto, a man-made cave-like structure with a swimming pool, whirlpools, and waterfalls. The grotto became notorious as the scene of some of the mansion's wildest parties and alleged debauchery. It was a secluded, dimly lit area designed for intimacy and escape. The estate also boasted a full-sized swimming pool with a cabana, a tennis court, a basketball court, and a gymnasium. A unique feature was the private zoo, for which Hefner obtained one of the few private zoo licenses in Los Angeles. The zoo housed a variety of exotic birds, including flamingos, peacocks, and cranes, as well as monkeys and other animals. These creatures roamed designated areas of the grounds, adding to the surreal and exotic atmosphere of the mansion. Another significant structure on the property was the game house. This separate building was a haven for amusement, featuring a large living area, multiple pinball machines, arcade games, a jukebox, and another screening room. It was a place where guests could relax, play games, and socialize in a more casual setting. The mansion also had a wine cellar with a secret door, reminiscent of Prohibition-era speakeasies, leading to a more intimate party space. Life at the Playboy Mansion was highly structured, especially for the Playboy playmates who resided there. Hefner maintained a set of house rules. For instance, playmates reportedly had a 9 o'clock in the evening curfew on weeknights unless they were out with Hefner. Guests of playmates were generally not allowed in the private quarters. Despite the image of perpetual partying, the mansion also functioned as a workplace. Playboy magazine operations, photo shoots, and business meetings were conducted on the premises. The mansion was famed for its exclusive parties, which attracted a mix of celebrities, musicians, athletes, and other prominent figures. Regular events included the Midsummer Night's Dream Party, Halloween festivities, and movie nights in the screening room, where Hefner would introduce classic films or new releases. These movie nights were a long-standing tradition, often featuring 3 films back-to-back. Attendees at mansion events over the years included countless stars. John Lennon reportedly once put out a cigarette on a valuable Matisse painting during a visit in the 1970s. Elvis Presley was said to have visited the original Chicago mansion and, according to some accounts, spent a night with 8 playmates. The Los Angeles mansion continued this tradition of celebrity magnetism. Hugh Hefner himself was the ever-present host, usually clad in his signature silk pajamas and smoking jacket, regardless of the time of day. He cultivated an image of the ultimate bachelor, surrounded by beautiful women and living a life of sophisticated leisure. The mansion was the physical embodiment of the playboy lifestyle he promoted, a world of glamour, sexual freedom, and aspirational luxury. The mansion was also a family home for Hefner. His sons, Cooper and Marston, grew up there for periods. Hefner married his second wife, Kimberly Conrad, in 1989, and for a time, the mansion reportedly became a more traditional family environment, though the parties and the playboy image persisted. After their separation, a decade later, the mansion reverted to its more familiar persona. Hefner married his third wife, Crystal Harris, in 2012. Over the decades, the Playboy Mansion became a cultural landmark. It was featured in numerous films, television shows, and documentaries, further cementing its place in popular culture. It represented a certain kind of fantasy, a world seemingly untouched by the mundane realities of everyday life. The cost of maintaining such an estate was considerable, running into millions of dollars per year for staff upkeep and hosting. In 2016, the Playboy Mansion was sold for $100 million to Darren Metropolis, a principal at the private equity firm Metropolis and Company and co-owner of Hostess Brands. A unique condition of the sale was that Hugh Hefner, then 90 years old, would be allowed to continue living in the mansion for the rest of his life. Hefner passed away at the Playboy Mansion on September 27, 2017, at the age of 91. Following Hefner's death, plans were announced for a significant renovation of the property by its new owner, who also owns the adjacent estate which was the former home of Hefner's brother. The intention stated was to restore and update the mansion while preserving its architectural heritage. Playboy Mansion, under Hefner's reign, was more than just a house. It was a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of an era, and the ultimate manifestation of one man's extraordinary vision of the bachelor life. Its legacy is complex, viewed by some as a pinnacle of liberation, and by others as an emblem of objectification. But its fame as a legendary bachelor pad is undisputed. The sheer scale of its operations, the number of famous individuals who passed through its doors, and the decades it spent at the center of a particular brand of American fantasy ensure its place in history.